one of the things I think a lot of people should be doing more of, and I've been talking this about to my C-suite clients a lot of times, is knowing when to insert a person in that process. It doesn't mean you're going to always have, it's like, do you have somebody answer your phone or not?
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Engati CX. And we have the pleasure of welcoming none other than Tripp Braden to our interview series. But before that, let's just begin with a quick introduction of what Engati is. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform available across 14 channels with 30,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, Tech World, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, and of course the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 300,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Tripp Braden is an executive speechwriter and presentation strategist who focuses on high-impact executive communication and presentation programs. He works with clients to create executive-level content to support strategic growth and business development activities. These activities support account-based marketing, new product rollouts, and partner management in Industry 4.0. These include advanced analytics, digital factories and automation, supply chain, blockchain, cloud, and the Internet of Things. Welcome, Tripp. It's such an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity to talk to someone and have a better understanding of what you're seeing going on and talking a little about what the future is and how we get out of COVID-19. Where do we go from here? How does technology empower that capability among people?
Right. But before we dive into all that awesomeness, we have a small, quick announcement for all of you viewers out there. We have something really special for you at the end of this interview. So stay tuned and, you will find out what it is. So Tripp, you ready? I'm going to shoot the first question to you.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Awesome. So Tripp, what is the Internet of Things according to you, and why has this term become so popular in recent times?
Well, I think it's a catch-all phrase. I think that's why it's so popular. There's so many different components of it now. So we see this all converging. I mean, one of the funny things about when you list all the things I've done, they all get to the Internet of Things ultimately. And that's part of why a lot of my executive clients are looking for information on this and how do they apply it. So the Internet of Things is the interconnectivity of all things, including people. And especially as technology now is racing forward after COVID, through COVID, it's given us an opportunity to see how this really could change the world. Because we can do things we could never have even imagined 2 years ago with this capability.
Yeah, I think, at times like these, I think we always kind of, overlooked the possibilities we could have had. So in one of these interviews, a guest had said that, maybe IOT was always present. Like we invented that AI in 1960s, but never really had that push, right? That, we have to use it. And I think now it's coming up post-COVID and stuff.
Well, it's a fascinating time because I think it's an application time, right? So this is where I think technology really takes off. We're moving from, early adopter stages with many companies who've been doing it for a while, and they're moving to Main Street. So now we get to actually see the stuff we've built works, which is kind of fun for engineering types like myself. And ultimately, the other component of that is we're starting to see how these things can be used uniquely to create competitive advantage.
That's correct and wonderfully put. So I think the second question is kind of like a follow-up to our conversation right now. So how has the Internet of Things evolved, right? Like we are saying, due to the convergence of new technology, like let's say machine learning and conversational AI?
Well, I think part of this, I think for a long time, what limited the Internet of Things is the infrastructure underneath it. So you can only go so fast. You didn't have the capability because of the latency issues and some of these other things that now are being addressed with 5G. You now have this opportunity to really do some things and do the test very quickly. So that's a very powerful thing, especially for people in a lot of organizations and industries, because what we've seen is a lot of these plants that are coming online don't have people in them. So now then it's all automated. So that just creates a new different environment and culture of how do we manage that conversation with our own customers, with supply chain, for example, being a critical element of Internet of Things, I think, to the idea of financial supply chain, which is how do we sell products all over the world and get paid for them.
Right, exactly. But you know what, Tripp, when we are talking about advanced technology like this, there's always a concern with respect to, let's say like privacy and security. So what, according to you, are the concerns about dangers in the growth of IoT, and especially in the areas of privacy and security?
That's a really great question, because I think a lot of times what will happen is when you look at cybersecurity, the Internet of Things won't happen if we don't cannot secure it. And I think
Exactly.
if you look at what's going on, and I've been in a number of IoT conferences, virtual conferences this year, that is the number one concern of the user. That is the executive suite concern. And I would even say at this point, the board level concern. So now if we don't look at those things and have those conversations, it's no longer a technology application problem. It's a business challenge. And it needs to be addressed by executive suite. And we need to have advocates from IoT that can make that case within the executive suite. And I think you're seeing those people rising to the top of their organization specifically because they're able to translate and become a bridge to that future we're talking about because they're securing it. They're looking at what needs to happen. They're making sure that the numbers are there. And I think the other thing is it's how do you pay for it?
Right. Right. And like you were saying, right, I think the problems and the security concerns have, we have solved a lot of problems since the last 2 years. What's the shift that you see, like, in problem solving?
Well, I think the shift now is moving to the consumer end user, right? So we have, I think in the industrial sector, we have a lot of these concerns addressed because we control it and lock it down. But when you start to put IoT applications and products into homes, that's a whole different place, and and they're hackable. So you look at even from I was just in a conversation earlier this week with a person talking about healthcare. And from the point of view of the fact that really, if you have a pacemaker today with a sensor in it, you're going to be interconnected somewhere in the world and to make sure that's protected. So it's kind of crazy because now security drives the concerns and liabilities, which are, right now with COVID, a lot of CFOs are seeming to run the companies. So I think that issue is critical from the point of view of risk management and the bigger picture.
That's true. Right. So, Tripp, help me understand, right? So you talk a lot about like the fourth industrial revolution. So how best can businesses prepare for this, for the fourth industrial revolution, and what will be the role of, let's say, AI, automation, and IoT in that?
Well, I think a couple of roles, but I think one thing I would probably not jump over is the people part, right? I mean, one of the things I am as a people person, meaning I'm a human engineer, not a electrical or technical engineer. I'm actually a human engineer. And so my job is really to get this to be adopted. So what we have to look at is put a framework around some of these things for change management, right? So it's not just enough to have the technology in place. We have to get our people prepared for it. If you think about it today, your website becomes more and more critical, an element to the kind of the foundational element to how you communicate to the outside world. You don't have outside salespeople selling. So now you have to have this connectivity, which now means you have to have capabilities of going across the global supply chain.
Right. Right. So, but there's still a lot of resistance that comes through, right? Even with our clients, like when we are talking about chatbots and AI, a lot of these traditional businesses, they are very skeptical to kind of like, approach technology like that. So how do we go about that?
Well, a lot of my clients have been around for a long time. I mean, some of my clients are, Fortune 10 companies. So part of that, there's a word that no one wants to say, and it's kind of a dirty word. It's trust. What this comes down to is, do we trust you enough to trust you with our information, our businesses, and the things we're doing? So part of our job has to be as adopters. For example, you talk about chatbots. How much trust do you build with your chatbots? Do you change the dialogue? I'm writing, it's funny because of my pivot in this time has been out of technology, more into marketing again, which I did a lot of product launches. I launched Windows 2000. So I've done some big launches. And one of that is really writing in content to understand and educate people to what's going on so that they kind of have the same voice in their chatbots. I mean, if a company is very responsive to customer experience, it goes through from the top of the funnel all the way through the closed sale and beyond and services. So this is where I think there's an opportunity for people to really look at what they can do and adopt a more customer-centric, customer experience-driven model as they implement these processes.
Right. That is exactly what we believe at Engati, right? So Tripp, what we believe is that no matter how fancy your technology is really, but if it's really hard and, difficult for a human to actually have that connection with it, I mean, you're losing out in the entire point of it, right? So that's why technology like NLP, and that's why we focus heavily on centralizing, and keeping the customer in the center and then building the technology around it.
Well, I think that you hit it perfectly there. The fact that the customer is the center of your world. And the other part of this is the messaging, right? What do you want people to think when they come talk to you? One of the things I think a lot of people should be doing more of, and I've been talking this about to my C-suite clients a lot of times, is knowing when to insert a person in that process. It doesn't mean you're going to always have, it's like, do you have somebody answer your phone or not? That's a great, with all the things we can do today, probably not. But if we could have a customer service person monitoring so that if somebody is becoming frustrated, they can insert themselves, make that customer experience better because we're watching it. And we can also see what people are responding to. I mean, I'm getting down to the micro level for me. I'm looking at content of your chatbot content and saying, what does this say to you when you ask it this way, when you look at a global economy and a global customer, right? So there's things are possible, but you have to be cognizant of what's going to happen.
Exactly. I think that's a wonderful point that you put, because at the end of the day, a customer doesn't want, a robot to get nosy, right? Hey, like, I didn't understand what you want to say. Okay, this is it. This is that. It's not, I mean, with the human touch, it becomes a little bit more solid. The trust factor that you were talking about, kind of like, that is important. And that's why we focus, right, with our chatbots also with the live, the live agent technology. That feature helps you kind of get it. And Tripp, what I'm talking about is the most important part is how smooth the transition is, right, from the chatbot to the human. I think that is one important factor that a lot of people miss on.
Well, I think part of it, though, is because they're not aware there's some transitions going on. They're not really aware of the process or workflow. One of the things I do with a lot of my clients today is the buyer's journey. Let's walk through this buyer's journey and look at this, what we're creating here as a way of making this happen and knowing what's going to happen along the way and what we would like to have happen. I mean, it's kind of interesting because technology has got so far along with really limited interaction from people. So now you have to go back and say, okay, now how do we improve it to get to that, instead of being an 8 or a 7 experience, which people today don't want, but a 9 or a 10, how do we go back and re-engineer this? This is, I think, a continuous process of improvement that we have to really instill on our clients. Is this is a part of what we provide you with, is what we learn from what we see. In your case, you have a tremendous amount of client information available to you to say what works and what doesn't. Right. A smart business person or an entrepreneur who's looking to partner with you should take advantage of that all that expertise that resides in your organization, because you're seeing thousands of conversations a week, much more than I might see on my site in a whole year. So that's where you have to take advantage of your partnerships that you create. Should have those elements to it. And trust is a fundamental partnership promise, as well as understanding the expertise of both partners. Exactly. They're never going to know their business as well as they do, but they're never going to know your business as well as you do. And you have to acknowledge that and have the right people involved.
Exactly. That's beautifully put, Tripp. And I think this was a fantastic conversation. I have one last question left for you. Like, are there any thoughts, any sound bites that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, I think what you have to do is remain positive and optimistic. Everyone I'm talking to are having really pretty solid years considering all the conditions that are on the ground. Some industries are being decimated by this. But if you're not being decimated by this right now, step forward, step up, right? I mean, this is an opportunity to really transform your relationship. Digital transformation is coming. We have two choices. We can let it run us over, or we can be in charge of it. I tend to still believe the best approach to this is taking charge of this and taking control of your destiny.
That's correct. That's correct. And, as they say, like, the best opportunities comes in the form of crisis. And that's the best way to kind of pick it up from there.
One thing I'd say on that is I think we all know there's a crisis. The question is who's going to get high enough to look at what it's really doing and how do we act upon what we learn? Because we really have, if you look at the history of the world and big businesses globally, most of these successful larger businesses that made it to that next level have made it during these kinds of times. And that's because they're entrepreneurial. And that's the other thing about your company. I think when I read through your stuff and started to look at it, you're founded and run by entrepreneurs, which means they can bring that element to the client.
Right. Really appreciate that, Tripp. All right. So this was amazing, Tripp. So many insights, so many fresh ideas. So thank you so much for giving us the time. Your insights were great. And I'm pretty sure our audiences are going to enjoy this interview. And as we promised to all our viewers, if you stuck around this long, we are so excited to announce that our ebook, The Evolution of Customer Experience, is out and available to download. It's absolutely free. Check the link in the description and you will find that. Also, Tripp, where can the followers find you? What are your socials? How can they connect with you? Could you just...
Sure. They can find me at trippbraden.com, which is Empowering Serving Leaders. For marketing, you can find me at Market Leadership Journal, which is marketleadership.net. And on Twitter, which is where most people find me pretty consistently, you can find me at Tripp Braden, which is TrippBraden. And like I said, there's a lot of information being shared for business people there, a lot of discussions about leadership, which is where I think the other advantage comes from. And they can find me there. And I love to talk to people. I love to hear what their thoughts are on what some of the things we talked about today. So thank you.
That would be great. I'm pretty sure a lot of these people will be right there, trying to follow you. Great content, guys. You should go and follow Tripp right there. And similarly, we'll be back with a new episode with a brand new expert. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one. Thank you so much, Tripp. Really appreciate this.
Thank you.